So good morning everyone. We are Group 6. I am Victor Ninaimisa Jr. and with my colleagues Pai Carmel and Mondalo Rachel Kate. Today we will be discussing the international expansion and global market opportunity. Global strategic choices. The why, where, and how of international expansion. The allure of global markets can be mesmerizing. Companies that operate in highly competitive or nearly saturated markets at home, for instance, are drawn to look overseas for expansion, but overseas expansion is not a decision to be made lightly, and managers must ask themselves whether the expansion will create real value for stakeholders. So here are the examples of why, where, and how. So maybe kamo na lang siguro magbasa para kuan ma-understand ninyo unsay kanang mga why and where sa and how sa international expansion. So next. Companies embark on an expansion strategy for one or more of the following reasons. First, to improve the cost effectiveness of their preparations. Second, to expand into new markets for new customers. Third, to follow global customers. Planning for international expansion. As companies look for growth in the new areas of the world, they typically prioritize which country to enter. Because many markets look appealing due to their market size or low cost production, it is important for the firms to prioritize which countries to enter first and to evaluate each country's relative merits. International market due diligence. International market diligence involves analyzing foreign markets for their potential size, accessibility, cost of operations, and buyer needs and practice to aid the company in deciding whether to invest in entering that market. Market due diligence relies on using not just published research on the market, but also interviews the potential customers and industry expert. A systematic analysis needs to be done using tools like Pastel and Cage analysis. Regional differences. The next part of the due diligence is to understand the regional differences within the country and to not view the country as a monolith. For example, to achieve a dual goals of reducing operations cost and being closer to a new market of customers. For instance, numerous high-tech companies identify Malaysia as an attractive country to enter. Malaysia is a relatively inexpensive country and the population's English skills are good, which makes it attractive both for finding local labor and for selling products. Understanding local consumers. Entering a market means understanding the local consumers and what they look for when making a purchase decision. In some markets, price is an important issue. In other markets, such as Japan, consumers pay more attention to details such as quality of products and the design and the presentation of the product or retail surroundings than they do to price. How to learn the needs of a new foreign market. The best way for a company to learn the needs of a new foreign market is to deploy people to immerse themselves in that market. Larger companies like Intel employ ethnographics and sociologists to spend months in emerging markets, living in local communities and seeking to understand the latent and articulated needs of local consumers. Differentiation and capability. When entering a new market, companies also need to think critically about how their products and services will be different from what competitors are already offering in the market so that the new offering provides customers value. Industry dynamics. In some cases, the decision to enter a new market will depend on the specific circumstances of the industry in which the company operates.
So let's proceed now to the peso globalization and importing. So what are the learning objectives of this topic? First is to know the components of peso analysis. Second is to recognize how peso is related to the dimensions of globalization. Third is to understand why importing might be a stealth form of international entry. So, the components of peso analysis. First is what is peso analysis? It is an important and widely used tool that shows the bigger picture of the firm's external environment. This is particularly to foreign markets. How come peso is helpful in terms of business? Peso helps manager gain better understanding of the opportunities and threats. It builds a better vision of the business's future. Third is this also analyzes the market growth, specifically the business position, potential, and the direction of the business. Provides insights into the key market flatteners. There are also three steps in peso analysis. First one is consider the relevance of each peso factors to your context. Second, it identifies and categorizes the information that applies to these factors. Third, it analyzes the data and draw conclusion. These are the six sections of PESA. First one is the letter P, which is political. Um, how stable is the political environment in the country? What are the local taxation policies? How do these affect your business? What are the country's foreign trade regulations? What are the country's social welfare policies? The second one is the letter E, which is the economic. What are the current and forecast interest rates? What is the current level of inflation in the country? What does this affect the possible growth of your market? Third one is a social cultural, which is the questions: what are the local lifestyle trends? What are the country's current demographics and how are they changing? What is the level and distribution of education and income? Technological. What level do the local government and industry fund research? Are those levels changing? What is the local government and industry's level of interest and focus on technology? How mature is the technology? Letter E. Environmental. What are the local environment issues? Are there any pending ecological and environmental issues in the industry? Are there environmental protection laws? Legal. What are the government regulations regarding monopolies and private property? Does intellectual property have legal protections? Are there relevant consumer laws? So there are also six special factors, which is the political factors that is significant influence on the businesses. Important for companies that are entering new markets, policies on regulation and taxation can vary state to state. Second one is economic factors. Managers also need to consider macroeconomic factors that will short-term and long-term effects on the success of their strategy. Inflation rate, tariffs, growth of local and foreign national economies, and exchange rates are critical. Unemployment labor and the cost of labor have strong bearing on strategy. Third one is the social cultural factors. Influences on businesses that vary from country to country. Social cultural characteristics also include consumerism, environmentalism, and the roles of men and women in society. Technological factors. Major bearing on the threats and opportunities firms do encounter. New technology may also provide the opportunity for more innovative products and services. Changes will have the potential to change the face of the business landscape. Environmental factors. Environment has been a factor in firm strategy, primarily from the standpoint access to raw materials. This factor is viewed as both direct and indirect cost for the firm, also evaluated on the footprint left by a firm on its respective surroundings. Legal factors. This reflects the law and regulations relevant to the region and organization. Also includes how rule is well established, how easily laws and regulations may change, and what are the costs of regulatory compliance are. Legal environment is often related to the political environment where laws and regulation can only change when they're consistent with the political will. So what is the globalization? Globalization has become a fact of life in every industry. This entails much more than companies simply exporting products to another country. A true global industry, the core product, is standardized. The marketing approach is relatively uniform and competitive strategies are integrated in different international markets. So we have also the globalization factors, which is the markets, costs, governments, competition. Under the markets, we have homogeneous consumer needs, global customer needs, global channels, transferable marketing approaches. Under the cost, we have large scale and large scope economies, learning and experience, sourcing efficiencies, logistics. Under the government, we have trade policies, common technological standards, common manufacturing and marketing regulations. Under the competition, we have interdependent countries, global competitors. Importing as a stealth form of internationalization. Ironically, the drivers of globalization have also given rise to a greater level of imports. Globalization, in this sense, is a very strong flattener. Importing involves the sale of products or services in one country that are sourced in another country. Firms often claim that they have no international operations and yet directly or indirectly base their production or services on inputs obtained from outside their home country. Firms that engage in importing must learn about customs requirements, informed compliance with customs regulations, entry of goods, invoices, classification and value, determination and assessment of duty, special requirements, fraud, marketing, trade finance, and insurance, and foreign trade zones. Importing can take many forms, from the sourcing of components, machinery, and raw materials to the purchase of finished goods for domestic resale and the outsourcing of production or services to non-domestic providers. So, outsourcing occurs when a company contracts with a third party to do some work on its behalf. The outsourcer may do the work within the same country or may take the work to another country. Offshoring occurs when you take a function out of your country of residence to be performed in another country, generally at a lower cost. International outsourcing or outsourcing work to a non-domestic third party has become very visible in businesses and corporate strategy in recent years. Business process outsourcing or BPO is the delegation of one or more IT intensive business processes to an external provider that in turn owns, administers, and manages the selected process on the basis of defined and measurable performance criteria. The firm in service and IT intensive industries such as insurance, banking, pharmaceuticals, telecommunication, and etc. among the early adopters of BPO. Insurance and banking are able to generate the bulk of the savings purely because of the large proportion of processes that can outsource. The processing of claims and loans and providing service through call centers.
International expansion entry modes. Learning objectives. Describe the five common international expansion entry modes. Second, know the advantages and disadvantages of each entry mode. Number three, understand the dynamics among the choices of different entry modes. The five common international expansion entry modes. In this section, we will explore the traditional international expansion entry modes. Beyond importing, international expansion is achieved through exporting, licensing arrangements, partnering and strategic alliance, acquisition, and establishing new wholly owned subsidiaries, also known as greenfield ventures. So table 8.1, international expansion entry modes. Type of entry, exporting. The advantages of exporting is fast entry, low risk. And disadvantages of exporting is low control, low local knowledge, potential negative environmental impact of transportation. Licensing and franchising. Advantages: fast entry, low cost, low risk. Disadvantages: low control, license may become a competitor. Legal and regulatory environment must be sound. Partnering a strategic alliance. Advantages: shared cost and investment needed, reduced risk, seen as local entity. Disadvantages: higher costs than exporting, licensing or franchising, integration problem between two corporate cultures. Acquisition. Advantages: fast entry, known, established operations. Disadvantages: high cost, integration issue with home office, greenfield venture, or launch of a new unowned subsidiary. Advantages: gain local market knowledge, can be seen as insider who employs local maximum control. High disadvantages: High cost, high risk due to unknowns, slow entry due to setup time. So exporting, typically the easiest way to enter an international market. And therefore, most firms begin their international expansion using this model of entry. Exporting is the sale of products and services in foreign countries that are sourced from the home country. Amusing anecdotes. Next. Partnership. Next. Partnership Partnership and strategic alliance. Another way to enter a new market is through strategic alliance with a local partner. A strategic alliance involves a contractual agreement between two or more enterprises stipulating that the involved parties will cooperate in a certain way for a certain time to achieve a common purpose. To determine if the alliance approach is suitable for the firm must decide what value the partner could bring to the venture in terms of both tangible and intangible aspects. Next. Strategic alliances are also advantageous for small entrepreneurial firms that may be too small to make the needed investments to enter the new market themselves. The disadvantages of partnering, on the other hand, are lack of direct control and the possibility that the partner goals differ from the firm goals. Acquisition. An acquisition is a transaction in which firm gains control of another firm by purchasing its stock, exchanging the stock for its own, or, in the case of private firm, paying the owners a purchase price. New wholly owned subsidiary. The process of the establishing of a new wholly owned subsidiary, also called greenfield venture, is often complex, the potential costly, but it's afford the firm maximum control and has the most potential to provide above average returns. The cost and risk are high given the cost of establishing a new business operation in a new country. Next.
Cage analysis. Well, CAGE stands for C is for cultural distance, A is for administrative distance, G is for geographic distance, and E is for economic distances. Well, CAGE analysis, defining CAGE analysis, Pankaj Megawat, an international strategy guru, developed the CAGE analysis framework to offer businesses to evaluate countries in terms of distance between them. According to him, distance is defined broadly in terms of cultural distance, administrative distance, economic differences, and geographic or physical distances. Next. Well, this table signifies the CAGE framework. Like, for example, you need in cultural differences, you need to reconsider the different languages, different ethnicities, and administrative, the lack of colonial ties, the lack of shared regional trading blocks, the lack of common currency. Well, the rest is for you to read. Next. Why CAGE analysis emphasizes distance? Because in cultural distance, you need to, as what I've said, you need to consider the language, ethnicity, religion, work systems, traditions, values, social norms, and dispositions. In administrative distance, you need to consider the colonial ties, trade agreements, currency, legal system, government policies, political hostility, visa and work permit requirements, and corruption. In economic, the per capita income, cost of labor, availability of human resources, organizational capabilities, and economic size. In geographic or physical distance, you need to consider the physical distance, common land border, time zones, climate, landlockness, transportation, and communication. Next. Well, how to apply age analysis framework? First is to identify locations that offer low raw material costs, assess the markets or consumers or other key decisions criteria. For instance, determine that you are interested in markets with strong customer buying power. So you would use per capita income as your first sorting criterion. Well, this is an example of using cage analysis in fast food industry. Gimawa provides an example for fast food industry where he shows that on the basis of per capita income, countries like Germany and Japan would be the most attractive markets for the expansion of a North American fast food company. However, when he adjusts this analysis for distance using the gauge framework, he shows that Mexico ranks as the second most attractive market for international expansion for ahead of Germany and Japan. Any international expansion strategy still needs to be supported by specific resources and capabilities possessed by the firm, regardless of the picture presented by the cage analysis. Next. Thus, the cage framework can be used to address the question of where, which arena, and how, which entry vehicle to expand internationally. Identifying institutional voids using cage analysis. Cage framework can also apply it to identify institutional differences. When we define institutional differences, it includes differences in political systems and in financial markets. The greater the distance, the harder it will be to operate in that country. Emerging markets in particular can have greater differences because these countries lack mainly of specialized intermediaries that make institutions like financial market work. An institutional void refers to the absence of the key specialized intermediaries found in the markets of finance, managerial talent, and products in which otherwise reduce transaction costs. If an institution lacks these special intermediaries, there is an institutional void. Next. 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 So, what are the strategies for handling institutional void? Next, Meg. So, these are the three strategies for handling institutional voids. When a firm detects an institutional void, it has three choices for how to proceed in regard to potential target market. First is to adapt its business model. Second, change the institutional context or stay away. Next. Just for example, when McDonald's tries to enter the Russian market. First, the McDonald's tried to enter the Russian market. However, in the Russian market, they found an additional void. Well, it is found that the Russian market lacks of local suppliers. So what they do, they create a joint venture, which They imported cattle from Holland, or roasted potatoes from United States. And three is agricultural specialists. They import agricultural specialists from Canada and Europe to improve Russian farmers. As a result, they establish their market in the Russian. As a result, they established their own supply chain in the Russian market. Well, they ethical practice and international expansion. Nestle Nespresso's division is one of the company's fastest growing division. The division makes a single cup espresso machine along with a single serving capsule of coffees from around the world. Nestle is headquartered in Switzerland, but the coffee it needs to buy is primarily grown in rural Africa and Latin America. Nespresso set up local facilities in these regions that measure the quality of the coffee. As of the result, it helps local farmers improve the quality of their coffee. It pays more for coffee beans that are higher quality. Nespresso has gone even further by advising farmers in farming practices that improves the yield of the beans farming get per hectare. The results have proven beneficial to all parties. As to farmers, to earn more money. As to Nespresso, it gets better quality beans and the negative environmental impact of the farms has diminished. Next.
Scenario planning analysis. Learning objectives. Understand the history and role of scenario planning and analysis. Know the 6 steps of scenario planning and analysis. Be able to map the scenarios in 2 by 2 matrix. The history and role of scenario planning and analysis. Strategic leaders use the information revealed by the application of pestle analysis, global dimension, and cage analysis to uncover what the traditional SWOT framework calls opportunities and threats. A SWOT or strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, our assessment is a strategic management tool that helps you take stock of an organization's internal characteristic or its strengths and weaknesses, such as any action plan builds on what it does well while overcoming or working around weaknesses. The SWOT assessment also helps a company assess external environmental conditions or opportunities and threats that favor or threaten an organization's strategy. Scenario planning helps leaders develop a detailed, internally consistent picture of a range of plausible outcomes as an industry evolves over time. You can also incorporate the results of scenario planning into your strategy formulation and implementation. The 6 steps of formulating a scenario plan are the following. First, choose the target issue, scope, and time frame that the scenario will explore. Second, brainstorm and set of key drivers and decision factors that influence the scenario. Third, define the 2 dimensions of greatest uncertainty. Fourth, detail the 4 quadrants of the scenarios with stories about that feature. Fifth, identify indicators that could signal the scenario of unfolding. And 6, assess the strategic implication of each scenario. Trends and uncertainties. Among the driving forces for change, be sure to distinguish between trends and uncertainties. Trends are forces for change whose direction and sometimes timing can be predicted. So I think that's all for today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for understanding our topics, and God bless all.